Mary had always lived a quiet life, content with her small routine and simple pleasures. She worked at a local library, spending her days surrounded by books and stories of other people's adventures. Her life, though peaceful, had recently been clouded by sadness. She had lost her husband a few years ago, and the emptiness in her home had grown harder to bear as time passed. Every corner of her house reminded her of the past, of the life she had shared and the plans they had made together. Friends and neighbors often visited, trying to cheer her up, but nothing seemed to fill the quiet that followed her husband's passing. She had never imagined that a single day could change everything, yet that day arrived in the most unexpected way. One afternoon, while running errands in town, Mary walked past the local orphanage. She usually avoided looking inside, the thought of children without parents was too painful. But that day, something felt different. She paused at the gate, hearing the laughter and chatter of children playing in the yard. Her eyes caught sight of a small boy sitting alone on the steps, watching the other children with a quiet, serious expression. His clothes were worn, and his hair was messy, but there was something about his eyes that stopped her. They were deep and sad, yet curious, as if he had already seen much more of the world than a 5-year-old should. Mary felt a tug in her heart, a feeling she could not ignore. She found herself walking toward him, her mind filled with questions and doubts. Who was he? Why was he sitting alone? But as she approached, the boy looked up and offered a small, shy smile. That simple gesture, innocent and unguarded, touched Mary in a way she could not explain. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sense that this boy, this tiny stranger, needed her help, and perhaps she needed him just as much. The thought was sudden and frightening. Mary had never considered adoption before. She had no children of her own and had never imagined herself raising someone else's child. Yet, in that moment, all her fears and hesitations seemed to fade, replaced by a strong, undeniable feeling that this boy belonged with her. Over the next few days, Mary could not stop thinking about him. She visited the orphanage multiple times, learning his story bit by bit. His name was Daniel. He had lost both his parents in a tragic accident and had been living in the orphanage since then. The staff spoke highly of him. He was quiet, intelligent, and thoughtful, though understandably reserved and cautious with strangers. Mary listened to each detail, her heart aching for the hardships he had endured. She knew adopting him would not be easy. He had experienced loss and pain that might make him wary, even distrustful. But she also knew that she could give him something he had never truly had before, a home filled with love, care, and security. Friends and family were surprised when Mary shared her decision. Many tried to warn her about the difficulties, the challenges of adopting an older child, and the emotional strain it might bring. They asked why she would take on such responsibility at her age, reminding her of the quiet life she had built for herself. Mary listened politely but knew deep down that this was not a decision she could explain logically. It was not about convenience or timing, it was about heart. She could not walk away, not when she had already imagined what life could be like with Daniel in it, not when she felt that this small boy was meant to be part of her life. The legal process was long and exhausting. Paperwork, interviews, background checks, and home inspections tested Mary's patience and resolve. Each step reminded her of the magnitude of her choice. She was not just bringing a child into her home, she was committing herself to a lifelong bond, a promise to love, protect, and nurture someone who had already known so much pain. At times, doubt crept in. Could she handle the responsibility? Would she be enough for him? But each time she looked at Daniel's photo, his hopeful eyes seemed to answer for her. Finally, the day came when Mary was allowed to bring Daniel home. She remembers walking up to the orphanage, her hands trembling with anticipation and nerves. Daniel clutched his small bag, looking around with cautious curiosity. Mary knelt down to his level, smiled, and extended her hand. "Welcome home," she whispered, her voice shaking. Daniel hesitated for a moment, then slowly placed his hand in hers. It was a small gesture, but in it, Mary felt the first spark of trust, the beginning of a bond that would grow stronger with every passing day. That night, as Daniel slept in his new room, Mary sat quietly in the living room, reflecting on the journey that had brought them together. She realized that life sometimes presents choices that are unexpected, challenging, and even frightening, but also miraculous and beautiful. Adopting Daniel was not just a decision, it was a leap of faith, an act of love that neither of them could have predicted would shape the rest of their lives. From that moment on, Mary knew that her life had changed forever, and for the better. Bringing Daniel home was just the beginning. At first, Mary thought the hardest part was over, but she soon realized that loving a child who had endured loss and loneliness came with challenges she had never imagined. Daniel was quiet, almost too quiet, as if he were constantly measuring the world around him and deciding whether it was safe to trust it. At school, he struggled to make friends, often sitting alone while other children played. At home, he would sometimes lash out over the smallest things, throwing tantrums or refusing to eat. Mary quickly understood that his behavior was not defiance, it was fear, sadness, and confusion wrapped together. Every night, she would sit beside his bed, gently brushing his hair, whispering stories, and singing soft lullabies, hoping that each word could heal a little piece of the pain he carried. The first few months tested Mary in ways she had never expected. There were mornings when she felt like giving up, when Daniel's cries and anger made her question whether she was capable of being a mother. Friends and neighbors offered advice, some well-meaning, some critical, but Mary knew that no one else could truly understand the delicate balance she was trying to achieve, between discipline and patience, between guidance and freedom, between love and boundaries. She had to learn to read his silences, his frowns, and his subtle gestures. Sometimes, a glance was enough to tell her that he was frightened or feeling lonely, and other times, she had to sit through hours of silence before he finally opened up about what was troubling him. Slowly, Mary began to notice small victories, moments that felt like sparks of hope. The first time Daniel laughed freely, without hesitation, she felt her heart swell. The first time he called her Mom, without being prompted, she cried quietly in the kitchen, unsure whether she was more surprised by the word or by the emotion it carried. There were days filled with tears, but there were also days filled with triumphs. The first school project he completed on his own, the first time he invited a friend home to play, the first night he slept peacefully without nightmares. Each milestone, no matter how small, felt monumental to Mary, and she celebrated them as though they were victories in a battle that only they knew they were fighting. Mary also realized that Daniel's past experiences had left him with trust issues. He was wary of people's intentions, and even small gestures of kindness were met with hesitation. At first, he would pull away if she tried to hug him or hold his hand, and he would often hide his emotions behind silence or sarcasm. But Mary never gave up. She understood that building trust takes time, patience, and consistency. She maintained a routine, offered gentle words of encouragement, and never forced him to do anything before he was ready. Over time, Daniel began to understand that Mary's love was not conditional, that she would not leave him or abandon him, and that her home was a place of safety where he could finally be himself. There were also moments when Mary questioned whether she was doing enough. She worried about the impact of Daniel's early hardships on his emotional and social development. She spent hours reading books on child psychology, speaking to counselors, and seeking advice from other adoptive parents. She realized that love alone was not always enough, sometimes guidance, structure, and reassurance were just as important. And even with all her efforts, there were days when Daniel's mood would crash, or he would retreat into himself, leaving Mary feeling helpless. Yet she never stopped trying, never stopped showing up, never stopped believing that, with time, the boy who had been abandoned could learn to feel safe, happy, and loved. As the years went by, Mary began to notice Daniel changing in small but meaningful ways. He started opening up about his fears and dreams, sharing stories about school, friends, and even little thoughts he had kept to himself. He learned to trust not just Mary, but the world around him, slowly stepping out of the protective shell he had built. Mary watched with pride and awe as Daniel transformed, realizing that every difficult day, every tantrum, every tear had contributed to this growth. The boy who had once clung to the edge of childhood with fear was now beginning to blossom into someone confident, curious, and full of life. Looking back, Mary understood that the early challenges had not been obstacles, they had been lessons. They taught her patience, resilience, and the depth of unconditional love. They taught Daniel that, despite a difficult start in life, he could trust, he could love, and he could be loved in return. Those first years, filled with struggles and small victories, laid the foundation for a bond that would only grow stronger over the next decades, preparing them both for the incredible journey that lay ahead. As the years passed, the initial struggles slowly gave way to moments of connection that changed everything between Mary and Daniel. What had once been a house filled with tension, uncertainty, and cautious distance began to feel like home, not just a place with walls and furniture, but a space where trust, love, and warmth thrived. Mary noticed that Daniel no longer flinched when she entered the room. Instead, he would look up with curiosity, sometimes smiling, sometimes asking questions about her day or telling her little stories about what had happened at school. It was a small change, but to Mary, it meant the world. She realized that love, patience, and consistency were finally taking root in the heart of the boy she had adopted so many years ago. Their daily routines became opportunities to grow closer. Breakfasts together, once rushed and quiet, turned into conversations filled with laughter and playful teasing. Mary encouraged Daniel to share his thoughts and feelings, and he began to speak freely, his words reflecting a growing confidence and sense of belonging. Even ordinary activities, like grocery shopping or walking in the park, became moments of bonding. Daniel would point out interesting things, ask questions about the world, and slowly, they started building memories that were theirs alone. Mary cherished these moments, understanding that they were laying the foundation for a lifelong connection that would never be broken. School became another place where their bond strengthened. Daniel had always struggled with making friends, but Mary's encouragement and guidance helped him navigate social challenges. She taught him the importance of empathy, kindness, and standing up for what was right, lessons that would shape his character for years to come. Whenever he faced setbacks or disappointments, Mary was there, not to solve every problem, but to guide him, to show him that failure did not define him, and that he could always try again. With each challenge overcome, Daniel's confidence grew, and Mary felt a deep sense of pride, not just in his achievements, but in the resilience and determination he was developing. Outside the routines of school and chores, Mary and Daniel discovered shared passions that brought them even closer. They spent weekends exploring the nearby forest, reading books together, and even experimenting with cooking. Daniel's laughter echoed through the house as they attempted new recipes, sometimes failing spectacularly but always enjoying the process. These simple, joyful experiences were more than entertainment, they were the glue that strengthened their bond, creating shared stories and inside jokes that neither would forget. Mary realized that love was not just about care and protection, it was also about creating happiness, celebrating small victories, and finding joy in each other's company. As Daniel grew older, their relationship matured. He no longer saw Mary merely as a caretaker or guardian, he began to see her as a mentor, a guide, and most importantly, a mother in every sense of the word. He sought her advice on decisions, shared his dreams and fears, and started to understand the sacrifices she had made for him. Mary, in turn, recognized the transformation in Daniel. The boy who had once been wary and reserved was now expressive, confident, and thoughtful. She felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond pride, it was a quiet, steady joy that came from knowing that her love had truly made a difference in someone's life. Of course, there were still challenges. Adolescence brought mood swings, arguments, and moments of frustration. But even during these times, the bond they had built held firm. They learned to communicate, to apologize, and to forgive. Daniel began to understand the depth of Mary's patience and the consistency of her love. He realized that, no matter what, she would always be there for him, a constant presence in a world that had once seemed uncertain and harsh. That realization deepened his respect, affection, and gratitude for the woman who had chosen him when he had no one else. Through the years, Mary and Daniel's bond became more than just a mother and son relationship. It became a partnership rooted in trust, understanding, and mutual care. They laughed together, celebrated together, and even faced disappointments together, always leaning on each other for support. Mary often reflected on the journey they had taken, from the first tentative days filled with fear and uncertainty to the present, where love and trust flowed naturally between them. She understood that the growth of their bond was not an accident, but the result of years of patience, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment. By the time Daniel reached his teenage years, it was clear to everyone around them that they shared a unique, unbreakable connection. Friends and neighbors often commented on how close they had become, but Mary knew the truth: the closeness was earned, nurtured, and protected with care. Every struggle, every tear, and every small victory had built a bridge of love strong enough to withstand anything. And deep in her heart, Mary knew that the bond they shared was not just for the present, it was a lifelong foundation that would guide both of them through every challenge and joy yet to come. As Daniel grew older, Mary began to see the fruits of her unwavering love and dedication. The little boy who had once been quiet and unsure of the world was now thriving in ways she had only dreamed of. School became a place of accomplishment, not struggle. Daniel excelled in his studies, often staying up late to complete assignments with care, asking questions to understand every detail. Mary watched with pride as his teachers praised his intelligence, his curiosity, and his willingness to help classmates who struggled. Every report card, every small compliment, every achievement felt like a reward for the years of patience and devotion she had poured into his life. But Mary's pride was not just in Daniel's accomplishments, it was in the person he was becoming. He was kind, thoughtful, and considerate, qualities she had worked tirelessly to nurture. He remembered to thank her for small things, like cooking a meal or helping him with homework, and he began to show compassion to others, often volunteering to help classmates, neighbors, or anyone in need. Mary realized that these qualities, empathy, patience, and generosity, were more valuable than grades or trophies. She had not just raised a successful child, she had raised a good human being, someone whose heart and character would shape the lives of others just as hers had shaped his. Mary's journey, however, was not without sacrifices. She had given up vacations, late-night outings with friends, and sometimes even her career ambitions to be fully present for Daniel. There were nights when she stayed awake, comforting him through nightmares, listening patiently as he cried about fears and worries she could not erase. There were weekends when she skipped social gatherings to attend school events, sports matches, or community activities with him. Friends often asked why she gave so much of herself, sometimes hinting that she deserved a break, a life without so many responsibilities. But Mary knew that what she was doing mattered far more than any personal convenience. She was building a foundation for Daniel's life, one that would support him for decades to come. The sacrifices were not always easy to bear. There were moments of exhaustion when she questioned whether she could keep going, when the weight of responsibility felt heavy on her shoulders. But then she would catch Daniel smiling, helping a friend, or proudly presenting a school project, and all doubt would fade. Every effort, every sleepless night, every small compromise had contributed to the person he was becoming. Mary understood that motherhood, especially in adoption, was about more than care, it was about shaping a life, instilling values, and providing love even when it demanded everything she had. Daniel's achievements were a reflection of both his hard work and Mary's guidance. Sports competitions, academic awards, and artistic performances became celebrations not just of his talent, but of the bond they shared. Mary would often stand quietly at the back of the room, watching him shine, feeling a mix of joy and relief. She remembered the timid boy who had once clung to her hand with uncertainty, and she marveled at how far he had come. Every applause he received, every word of praise he earned, carried a silent message: all the struggles, sacrifices, and sleepless nights had been worth it. But Mary never let achievements replace love. She knew that success alone could not fill a child's heart. What mattered most was trust, connection, and support. Even as Daniel excelled in school and life, she continued to nurture their relationship, always reminding him that he was loved unconditionally, regardless of grades, awards, or achievements. She encouraged him to pursue his passions, to follow his dreams, and to remain humble and kind no matter where life took him. Daniel absorbed these lessons, learning that true success was not just measured by accomplishments, but by character, compassion, and the ability to lift others along the way. As Daniel approached his late teens, Mary noticed a quiet transformation. He was confident, independent, and respectful, yet he never took their bond for granted. He recognized the sacrifices she had made, often offering small gestures of appreciation, a note, a hug, a thoughtful comment, that reminded her that love and gratitude had a life of their own. Mary realized that her sacrifices had not gone unnoticed, they had been quietly shaping Daniel's heart, instilling in him a deep understanding of the value of care, effort, and commitment. Through it all, Mary felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The challenges of the early years had given way to achievements that were not just milestones, but testaments to their journey together. She had given her love, her time, and her energy without hesitation, and in return, she received something far greater than she could have imagined, a young man whose success was mirrored by his kindness, whose accomplishments reflected both talent and heart, and whose gratitude showed that every sacrifice she had made had been meaningful. Mary understood that the story of their life together was not just about adoption, it was about love, resilience, and the incredible rewards of patience and dedication. Daniel's achievements were a chapter in a much larger story, one that would continue to unfold with even greater moments of joy, pride, and deep emotional connection. As Daniel grew older, the bond between him and Mary evolved in ways that neither of them could have imagined. What had started as a mother's love for a vulnerable child and a child's cautious trust had matured into a relationship built on mutual respect, understanding, and profound connection. Over the years, both had learned lessons that could never be taught in schools or found in books, lessons about life, love, patience, and the enduring strength of human relationships. For Daniel, the most important lesson was the power of unconditional love. He had known loss and loneliness, yet Mary had shown him that care could be constant, unwavering, and pure. Through her patience, he learned that love was not about perfection or immediate results, but about showing up every day, even when it was hard, even when mistakes were made, and even when the world seemed uncertain. He understood that trust and security were built slowly, through consistent acts of kindness, encouragement, and support. It was a lesson that would shape the way he approached relationships, friendships, and eventually, the world around him. Mary, on the other hand, learned lessons she had never anticipated. Raising Daniel required more than love, it required patience, creativity, and resilience. She realized that sacrifices, though often invisible to others, were worth every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. Through the challenges, she discovered the depth of her own strength, and she learned that motherhood was not defined by biology, but by the willingness to give, nurture, and guide with all of one's heart. She learned that the impact of care extended far beyond the present, it shaped a life, a character, and the future in ways that could never be measured by awards or achievements. Together, they learned the importance of empathy. Daniel had once been a child who feared the world, who worried that every gesture of kindness might hide a hidden intention. Through Mary's guidance, he learned to recognize compassion, to appreciate it, and then to extend it to others. He began helping classmates, supporting friends, and even reaching out to younger children who reminded him of his own struggles. Mary observed with quiet pride as Daniel's empathy became one of his defining qualities. She realized that love could not only heal but could also inspire, creating ripples that extended far beyond the boundaries of a single household. They also learned the value of resilience. Life had not been easy for either of them. Daniel's early years had been filled with uncertainty, and Mary's had been marked by loss. Yet, through challenges, they both learned to adapt, to persevere, and to find strength within themselves and in each other. Daniel discovered that setbacks were not failures, but opportunities to grow. Mary understood that difficulties did not define a person's worth, but their response to them did. Together, they faced obstacles, academic pressures, social struggles, and the normal trials of growing up, and emerged stronger each time. Another lesson they shared was the importance of communication. Early on, Daniel had struggled to express his feelings. He often bottled them up, resulting in frustration or anger. Mary encouraged him to speak openly, to share even the small worries, and to listen without judgment. Over time, Daniel became more comfortable expressing himself, and Mary learned to truly listen, not just hear words, but understand emotions, fears, and desires. They discovered that honest communication was not just about avoiding conflict, but about creating connection, understanding, and trust. Perhaps the most profound lesson of all was gratitude. Daniel began to understand the sacrifices Mary had made for him, the nights she stayed awake when he cried, the hours she spent guiding him through challenges, and the countless moments of care she had given without expectation. This awareness shaped his character. He learned that gratitude was not just saying, "thank you," but honoring the love and effort of others through thoughtfulness, action, and respect. Mary, in turn, realized that seeing Daniel grow into a kind, responsible, and thoughtful adult was the greatest reward she could have ever imagined. As they reflected on their journey together, it became clear that these lessons were intertwined. Love taught empathy, patience taught resilience, trust taught gratitude, and guidance taught understanding. The lessons were not theoretical, they were lived, experienced, and reinforced every day through shared experiences, challenges, and victories. Each lesson strengthened the bond between them, shaping both Daniel's future and Mary's sense of purpose. By the time Daniel reached adulthood, the life lessons they had learned together had become inseparable from their identities. He knew how to love deeply, act compassionately, and persevere through life's challenges. Mary knew the profound impact of nurturing a life with patience and care. Together, they had not just survived the difficulties of adoption, they had transformed them into a story of growth, love, and lifelong learning. In the quiet moments, when they reflected on their journey, both Mary and Daniel realized the truth: the greatest lessons in life were not taught in schools or written in books. They were learned through love, sacrifice, patience, and shared experiences, the very things that had defined their extraordinary journey together. Years of shared struggles, triumphs, and small victories had brought Mary and Daniel closer than anyone could have imagined, yet life had one more unforgettable moment waiting for them. Daniel had grown into a thoughtful, capable young man, but despite his achievements and independence, he had been quietly planning something extraordinary, a way to honor Mary for the love, patience, and sacrifices she had given him all these years. The day came quietly, without warning, yet it carried the weight of years of gratitude and devotion. It began like any other day. Mary expected a simple weekend lunch, perhaps a small family gathering with a few friends. She did not suspect that Daniel had been working behind the scenes for months, carefully planning a surprise that would mark a turning point in both of their lives. When she arrived at the restaurant he had chosen, she was greeted not just by the familiar staff but by a group of people she had never met: teachers, friends, neighbors, and even some of Daniel's colleagues. Her heart skipped a beat, and a flicker of worry crossed her mind. What could this be? Daniel's calm smile reassured her, though she still could not imagine the extent of what he had prepared. As they sat down, Daniel asked Mary to close her eyes for a moment. Hesitant but trusting, she complied. When she opened them, she found herself facing a video montage, carefully edited to chronicle their life together. It began with the early days, Daniel's hesitant steps into her home, the quiet, uncertain boy she had welcomed with open arms. Then it showed years of shared experiences, birthday parties, school achievements, weekend adventures, and even the quiet, tender moments that only they had known. Mary felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. The video was not just a story, it was a celebration of their journey, a living testament to the love that had shaped both of their lives. But the video was only the beginning. Daniel had prepared something even more personal. He stood up and handed Mary a small, carefully wrapped box. Inside was a handwritten letter, each word chosen with care, expressing gratitude, admiration, and love. He wrote about the nights she had stayed awake when he cried, the sacrifices she had made without complaint, and the unwavering support she had given through every challenge. The letter acknowledged her patience, her guidance, and her belief in him when he struggled to believe in himself. Mary's hands trembled as she read, tears spilling freely, her heart swelling with emotions she could not contain. Daniel's final surprise was revealed as he spoke, his voice steady but full of emotion. He had used his first paycheck to make a donation in Mary's name to the local children's foundation, ensuring that her love and care would ripple out to help other children in need. Then he shared a plan to create a scholarship fund in her honor, something that would support young people just like him who needed guidance, encouragement, and a chance at a better future. The thoughtfulness and magnitude of Daniel's gesture left Mary speechless. She realized in that moment that the bond they shared had created something far greater than either of them could have imagined, a legacy of love, kindness, and inspiration. For Mary, this turning point was more than a surprise, it was validation. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every moment of patience had not gone unnoticed. Daniel's gesture proved that love, when given freely and consistently, can return in ways that surpass expectation. She understood that life sometimes rewards the heart in ways that cannot be measured by material gifts or achievements. It rewards the soul, the effort, and the devotion given without thought of return. As they embraced, Mary felt a deep sense of fulfillment that no words could capture. She realized that the turning point was not just Daniel's gift, but the culmination of decades of shared experiences, struggles, and love. It was the moment when the journey of adoption, filled with uncertainty and challenges, revealed its ultimate purpose, to create a lifelong bond, to teach lessons of gratitude, compassion, and resilience, and to show that true love always comes full circle. That day marked a shift in their lives. The love and trust between them, already strong, had grown even deeper. Mary understood that the turning point was not a single moment but a reflection of all the days, months, and years that had led them there. It was a moment that would remain etched in their hearts forever, a reminder that selfless love, patience, and guidance have the power to transform lives in ways that are extraordinary and unforgettable. After the turning point, the bond between Mary and Daniel grew stronger than ever, but the story was far from over. The true reward, the moment when all the years of love, patience, and sacrifice would be fully recognized, was about to unfold. Daniel had always known that words alone could not express his gratitude. He wanted Mary to feel, in the deepest way possible, just how much her devotion had shaped his life and how profoundly he cherished her. It began quietly, with small gestures that hinted at what was to come. Daniel would cook breakfast for her on weekends, leave little notes of thanks, and offer hugs that lingered longer than before. Mary noticed the change, the maturity in his actions, and the thoughtfulness in everything he did, but she had no idea that Daniel was planning something far bigger, a reward that would honor her not just as his mother, but as the remarkable woman who had given him a life full of love, guidance, and stability. The day of the reward arrived on a bright Sunday morning. Daniel asked Mary to join him on a drive, insisting that it was a simple outing. Mary, trusting him, agreed, not knowing that he had spent months orchestrating a day she would never forget. They drove through familiar streets, past parks where he had learned to ride a bike, past the library where Mary worked, past the little cafe where they often shared laughs over hot chocolate. Each stop held memories, each glance triggered stories of laughter, tears, and lessons learned. Mary began to feel a sense of anticipation, though she could not imagine what Daniel had planned. Finally, they arrived at a beautiful, quiet hall, decorated simply but with elegance. Inside were friends, family, neighbors, and even teachers and mentors who had been part of Daniel's journey. Mary's eyes widened as she realized that this day was about her, not as a guest, but as the honored person, the reason for the gathering. Daniel guided her to the front, where a video montage played, showing decades of shared moments, her holding his tiny hand as they walked to school, reading stories before bedtime, celebrating birthdays, and comforting him during tough times. Each clip was a vivid reminder of every small, selfless act she had given without expecting anything in return. As the montage ended, Daniel stepped forward. In his hands was a beautifully wrapped box. Mary opened it to find a handwritten journal, filled with reflections on their life together. Every page was a letter of gratitude, recounting moments she might have thought insignificant, the quiet nights of comforting him, the patience she had shown when he struggled, the sacrifices she made so he could thrive. Daniel wrote about how those actions had shaped him into the man he was today, instilling values of compassion, perseverance, and kindness that he carried into every part of his life. Mary's hands trembled as she read, her heart swelling with emotion she could hardly contain. But Daniel was not done. He had prepared one final surprise, the true reward he had been planning for years. He announced that he had purchased a small home for Mary, one where she could live comfortably, filled with everything she loved. More importantly, he had created a foundation in her name, dedicated to helping children in need, ensuring that her love and sacrifices would impact countless lives beyond their own. Mary could hardly speak, tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness, effort, and love behind this gesture. The room erupted in applause, but Mary felt it was more than applause, it was recognition of decades of selfless love, patience, and devotion. She realized that this reward was not just a material gift or a celebration, it was a reflection of the life she had nurtured, the love she had given, and the bond she had built. Daniel had taken the lessons she taught him, kindness, empathy, and generosity, and returned them in the most beautiful, tangible way imaginable. That evening, as Mary sat quietly in her new home, Daniel by her side, she understood the true meaning of reward. It was not just the house, the foundation, or even the applause, it was seeing the person Daniel had become, the life they had built together, and the legacy of love that would continue for generations. Every tear, every sleepless night, every sacrifice had led to this moment, and Mary knew, in her heart, that the greatest reward of all was the love they shared. From that day forward, Mary and Daniel's bond was celebrated not just privately but by everyone who knew their story. They had proven that acts of love, patience, and devotion could return in ways beyond imagination, that true rewards are earned not through expectation, but through unwavering care, and that the impact of a mother's love could shape a life, and a world, forever. As Mary and Daniel settled into this new chapter of their lives, it became clear that their story was no longer just their own, it had become something bigger, something that could inspire others. The years of love, struggle, patience, and sacrifice had created more than a bond between mother and son, they had created a legacy, a living testament to what selfless care and devotion can achieve. Every moment they had shared, from the first uncertain days of adoption to the heartfelt rewards of recent years, had built a foundation that would endure for generations. Mary often reflected on how far they had come. She remembered the quiet boy sitting alone on the orphanage steps, hesitant, wary, and unsure of the world. And she remembered the little victories that had seemed so small at the time, the first smile, the first word, the first night Daniel slept peacefully without fear. Those moments, she realized, were the building blocks of a life. Every sacrifice, every act of patience, had contributed to the person Daniel had become, kind, confident, empathetic, and thoughtful. The legacy was not in material things or awards, but in the values and love they had shared, the lessons that would carry forward long after any celebration had ended. Daniel, too, felt the weight and beauty of this legacy. He understood that his successes were not just his own, they were the reflection of Mary's unwavering support, the lessons she had taught him about compassion, perseverance, and integrity. He saw his life as a continuation of hers, a testament to the power of unconditional love. With the foundation he had created in her name, he was determined to share that love with children who, like him, had once faced uncertainty and hardship. Every child the foundation helped would carry forward a piece of Mary's heart, ensuring that her influence would ripple outwards in ways neither of them could have predicted. Their story began to touch others, too. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers were moved by the bond between Mary and Daniel. People shared their journey on social media, in articles, and in community events, marveling at the power of love and dedication to transform lives. Some were inspired to adopt children themselves, others were encouraged to nurture and cherish the relationships they had with the people in their lives. Mary and Daniel realized that their experiences had become more than a personal story, they had become a beacon of hope and inspiration for anyone willing to open their hearts. Yet, the legacy was not just public, it was deeply personal. Every holiday, birthday, and quiet evening together carried a renewed sense of gratitude and reflection. Mary and Daniel found joy in simple traditions, cooking together, walking in the park, reading books aloud, and sharing stories of the past. Each tradition reinforced the lessons they had learned: patience, understanding, empathy, and the power of unwavering love. These routines, these shared moments, were the threads that wove the fabric of their legacy, a tapestry that could never be undone. As Daniel pursued his own life, career, and family, he carried Mary's lessons with him. He became a man who understood the importance of giving without expectation, of helping others quietly and sincerely, and of showing love in ways both big and small. Mary watched him, her heart full, knowing that every decision she had made, every sacrifice she had given, had contributed to this ripple of goodness in the world. Their bond had created more than a family, it had created a model of love that could inspire countless others. Mary herself found a deep sense of peace. She realized that her greatest achievements were not measured by awards, money, or recognition, but by the life she had nurtured, the heart she had guided, and the love she had shared. She understood that her story, though personal, had meaning beyond herself. It was a reminder that the choices we make, the patience we show, and the care we give can create ripples that outlast us, touching lives in ways we may never fully see. In the quiet moments, Mary and Daniel often reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the orphanage steps to the joyful celebrations of adulthood, from struggles to triumphs, their lives had been intertwined in ways that were extraordinary and profound. They understood that love, patience, and devotion were not just virtues, they were forces capable of changing lives, shaping futures, and leaving legacies that endure beyond time. Their story was proof that even the smallest acts of care, given consistently and selflessly, can create a lifetime of impact. And so, Mary and Daniel's legacy continued, not just in awards, recognition, or material gifts, but in every life they touched, every lesson shared, and every act of love inspired by their journey. It was a legacy of hope, resilience, and unwavering devotion, a story that would be remembered and celebrated for years to come,